This is part 4 of a series of videos on the game Furi. Click on the screen now to go to part 1. If you have been watching since part 1, I'm also adding a final spoiler wall here. The reason being, up to this point, with the first 3 fights, I've given you a real taste of what Furi has to offer. And although seeing any of those fights takes a little away from the magic of discovery, a certain bigger charm about the game will be lost if you decide to play the game after watching this point in the series. So, if you are on the fence, this is your last opportunity to go get the full experience out of Furi yourself. Oh, he disappeared. Well, I guess I can give it another listen.
Hit or miss, I guess they never miss, huh?
This hellhole place can't be the end of the road.
The line got me angry. Good thing we're settling back down into normalcy again. Now we're looking at the scale. When I said Lauren was an odd musician tied to an odd boss, I was not understating a thing. If each boss has something unique about them, then the scale's unique attribute is his level.
Years of evolution, culture, civilization, great intellect, wonders of nature. Bam! Wiped out in one single impact.
This is the first indicator of just what the stranger did that got him locked in the slammer with a life sentence of being tortured to death. If this is the sort of destructive potential you're dealing with from just one person, and you don't have any real effective way of killing them, how do you deal with that? As for the scale himself, well...
You know, he got, contaminated.
It's left up to interpretation what exactly that means, so I'm probably going to figure the game means that the scale was contaminated as a consequence of the fallout of what the stranger did, and not that the voice means that the stranger went all Chris Metzen, "I have corrupted you with my fell energies." Alright, pump the brakes. Why wasn't this boss scored by Dance with the Dead? The character literally looks like the album character of Into the Abyss. The group has been active for several years. Sorry, immature of me to assume. They probably had like 5 people on the lineup they considered for this boss music. Again, Lauren isn't bad, I'm just kind of a Dance with the Dead fan. This boss is effectively a sewer level, so it being memorable at all is a job well done in my books, and Lauren's contribution is a piece of that puzzle. The scale's walking segment also isn't that bad, since there is more than one way to walk through part of this one. Let's talk about the walking segments from an aesthetic perspective. Aesthetically, this game is a critic trap, which is to say, this part of the design was intentionally done to lure people like me into playing it. The game features all kinds of pretty angles and a stylized aesthetic, so you can really sit back and enjoy the experience of walking through this world. Then the game shatters the pelvic bones of anyone who actually thinks gaming should be relegated to walking simulators. I can already imagine that Kotaku writer being drawn in by the retro nostalgia and the aesthetics, and then being punished for her foolishness with the gameplay. Critics hate gameplay, and they especially hate having to endure gameplay to get to the cinematic aspects of the game. Another piece of the puzzle of the good sewer boss is just how fun this boss is. After the mess that was the end of the last boss, coming back to a fight that requires technical skill is pretty goddamn great. Phase 1. See these big green balls that have a goo trail behind them? They can be both parried and destroyed with a full charge shot. Failure to appreciate that fact will only make things harder on yourself. The difference in the 3 difficulties on this fight, unlike most others, is only really the complexity of the waves he sends out. These promenade bubbles are comical. These furious fans of knives find your existence comical. Annoying is that this wave gets bigger the farther out it travels, so the basic dodge's range isn't sufficient for dodging it. What makes this facet real annoying is that the scale likes to teleport around the ring before using it, so when in doubt, charge your dodge. Except when you shouldn't. Like I said, this is mostly a technical fight requiring you learn more about the patterns and when you should and should not use certain moves, rather than requiring a degree of mechanical skill. What is the difference between technical and mechanical skill? Technical skill is the mastery of knowing the specific facets of a game to progress, while mechanical skill is a general skill set. Technical skill is what speedrunners use to maximize their times, while mechanical skill is more of a general skill set that applies universally. The chain and the strap lean more towards requiring a degree of mechanical skill in order to defeat, while the line and the scale require more technical skill. This is a really artistic way of saying that the scale is a very simple boss. Of course, simplicity goes a lot farther in my eyes than needless phase complexity. While the scale and the line are both technical bosses, the scale is clearly superior in that regard. On a mechanical boss, they typically keep using their skill sets, and just add more moves as you progress through the phases, whereas a technical boss typically changes the moves they're using between phases. Meaning that while you could learn all of the scale's moves, remembering which rules to apply where can be challenging. Is this the wave that rotates, or the wave that shoots projectiles that track me? I think plenty of arguments could be made for both technical and mechanical bosses, in terms of which format is superior. However, the truly Patrician design would be to just use both.
Look at the filth. Darkness. Look at me. Don't look so horrified. You're staring at yourself.
The scale uses a lot of AoE attacks, a lot of them. Even in his melee phases, he has this annoying habit of throwing them down like it's Val Day. Get it? Sorry. Seriously though, almost every phase of the scale involves dodging around area of effect attacks. This is, hard on Furi difficulty your first time, but it's just a matter of learning what all tricks he uses before you beat him. He's certainly no difficulty curveball like a certain old man boss. When not slamming you or spitting acidic poison, the scale is still a pretty tricky boss. He has a simple combo pattern that he loves to combine with other moves to keep surprising you. He'll also occasionally disappear under the surface of the water and try to get a jump on you. The scale really is a fun fight. Just when you think you get into a rut of repetition, he finds something else new to throw at you, like splitting off into 6 copies of himself around the arena, or jumping into the middle of the ring and, never mind, this part isn't fun. Phase 5. I know, I'm skipping ahead, but most of these phases are largely similar in pattern. He likes using these tracking, splitting orbs that just refuse to die. Why are they purple? Well, you can't parry them. Is it because they track you? Whatever. Once you get him down to his desperation phase, he goes all out, and by that I mean he shows you the deficiencies in your joystick. Seriously, it feels like it wants precisely the perfect angle that my defective Xbox One controller just can't perform. Yeah, I play on a controller, get off my back you contrarian. The PC controls are bad in one very critical regard, and that is dodging. Think to yourself, if I had a choice between my Cherry MX Reds and my Corsair K70 and my Corsair Saber versus a bog standard Xbox One controller, do you think I would choose the controller? Especially in a game where reaction time is so important, input delay could be a huge factor? Of course I wouldn't choose the controller. Granted, this Xbox controller is one of the best I've ever owned, but that is hardly a real competition looking at you, 360 controller. I'm just not the controller type. I'll drive in games with mouse and keyboard if it's functional enough to do so. So when this game pops up a message saying, hey, gamepad recommended, I say to myself, you know what, I'm gonna thumb my nose at authority and do what I want to. And it went fine. For around one boss until I needed to do something very difficult. I needed to perform a 30-degree dodge. Why is this difficult? Well, on a keyboard, your directional controls are W, A, S, and D. For controls, 90 degrees per direction. In games, to move at an angle, you have to press a combination of 2 keys at the same time in order to unlock that 45-degree turn. I know, this is first day of playing computer stuff. Anyways, in most games, this is a fine way to control things. Furi has to complicate this. Alright, so to aim in Furi, you have a choice between screen and radial. Pick screen. It's vastly superior. You'll be able to shoot more accurately than you can on a controller. Then, to move, you have directional and reticle. What is this, you might ask? Reticle moving delegates the dodging control to move in the direction of the reticle, so I can fine-tune what direction I want to dodge in because it's effectively controlled by the mouse. Directional dodging allows you to control the direction of your dodges with the keys independently. This locks you to 45-degree chunks of dodging, so reticle movement is better, right? Well, imagine if you want to, say, shoot and dodge at the same time. Perfectly possible on a controller, less so on mouse and keyboard. So if you're shooting and want to dodge an incoming attack on reticle control, you have to quickly change the direction you are aiming, dodge, and then return to firing at the boss. On directional control, you can keep shooting at the boss and can move and dodge in any of the 8 directions, so you can shoot and dodge, but lose any of the fine control over where you're dodging to. I want you to bear in mind that this whole time the controller is capable of shooting and dodging at the same time, whilst being able to dodge at the full 360 degrees. Neither control scheme is comfortable to play with. If you play reticle, dodging incoming waves is okay as long as the wave is coming from the boss. Otherwise, I have to retrain my brain to keep moving the reticle every time I need to dodge. Or when I dodge, I will end up jumping into the attack instead of away from it. Directional is much simpler since it allows you to control the direction of movement with the movement keys. But as stated before, can only handle going in 8 directions, making some bosses that require finer dodges effectively impossible. Well, not impossible. Stubborn people have done it. Stubborn people have also beaten their dick with a ball-peen hammer, and we all know how that went. Want to throw a wrench in all this? In melee phases, it throws all the rules to the wind and operates under a completely different rule set. Okay, so the boss attacks me and I parry. I'm at the 3 o'clock position in the ring. I know the second move in his moveset is going to be an AoE attack that excludes the outer ring, so I need to dodge backwards from the current position to get to safety. If I dodge forwards, or to the sides, I will still be in the splash zone and get hit. So what button do you press to get out of the splash zone? On a controller, you would tilt the stick to the 6 o'clock position and press the dodge button to move backwards, because you are moving your character backwards relative to the direction they are facing when you press the button. On a keyboard, that would translate to the S key, right? Nope. To dodge backwards from this attack, you need to press D. If I were at his 9 o'clock, to dodge backwards, you would have to press the A key. The movement keys are bound to the fixed directions of the camera angle, not the player character. What? How do you mess that up? Want to know what's brutally ironic? Mouse and keyboard can completely nullify some threats that the controller can't face. Need to parry around 20 things in a second? The keyboard parry can do that, because the controller parry is bound to a stiff controller button versus a Cherry MX Red, so it can't compete. Metal Gear Rising had the same quirk where parrying was a billion times easier on a keyboard. So, if you're willing to switch out control schemes for certain phases of bosses, it can make some things easier. This game was obviously designed to be played with a controller. I wonder how well it'd work on a Switch controller. Yeah, the Pro controller is basically just an Xbox controller in layout. I mean the default one. I might have to borrow a Switch just to test that out at some point. I hate the Scales Desperation phase on Furier. I hate the first part in particular, since it has you trying to perform perfect dodges between these safe zones. I still can't reliably do this without taking a bit of damage. Then it has you weaving in and out of waves in a very tight area. This is manageable, but I do remember my first time on Furi having to restart this entire fight more than a couple times because of this one final phase.
I searched and searched. A solution, an answer, anything. Just some hope, that I could fix this, fix him, so my plan would be flawless. One thing about Fishface up there, he got, contaminated. I'm not sure he's got much to say. He probably can't even speak at all anymore.
And then I'll come for your friend too. He can't hide forever.
Being incorrect is a consequence of not doing enough research, like stating that Justice was a 90s French house group when they started in the aughts.
But if he does, just ignore the crazy babble.
Yeah, I've kind of had to pick up that skill in my life. The best way to deal with a crazy person is to just cut him in half, right?
Will we share his fate, or will life take an unexpected turn? Hope comes from the strangest places.
What? Share his fate of being horribly mutated, living in a lake of murky green water on the off chance that the person you hold responsible breaks out of prison and comes to fight you? I know he holds us responsible, but honestly, breakdancing on the surface of water and spitting poison, I don't see a downside of this transaction. I think he should have thanked us and let us pass.
In all this madness, we're lucky to have our little routine, our safeguard. A thread of reason that we can hang on to. Yeah. Repeat after me. The jailer is the key. Kill him, and you will be free.